everybody, welcome back to another My Top 5 video, and today I'm going to actually take a look at my top 5 favorite overdrive pedals or blocks in the Helix, Line 6 HX Stomp, and Line 6 Pod Go. In a lot of videos and a lot of sounds I do, oftentimes I will try and use amp distortion as much as possible, and that's actually something that even held true before I worked in the modeling world and in real guitar rigs. I always liked to pick an amplifier that had a great, second channel or overdrive sound built right into it. And it was something I always liked about that. Now, having said that, sometimes it's nice to get some different flavors of overdrive. And the nice thing about the Helix is, regardless of what amp model you're using, maybe you're using an amp model that you really like for something, but it doesn't have that much gain on tap, we can pick an appropriate overdrive pedal to make it sound, keep the sound we like about it sort of on the cleaner side, and then to be able to boost it up into possible, rhythm and overdriven lead tones if necessary, depending on which overdrive model we have. Now, again, like with all my top 5s, these are just my opinion. I'll go through them and give you, just a rundown on the settings I like on them. And even that's going to change a lot depending on what we're feeding them into, right? So, but more maybe the parameters and the features I like about them and what makes them some of my favorites. And it's nice to have 5 different ones that you kind of know and love, because certain pedals sound better with certain presets and certain amp models as well. There's been lots of times I've needed to throw an overdrive block in front of the amp model I'm going for, and sometimes one of my favorites isn't good for that particular situation. I throw a different one in and it works. So, this is nothing here is carved in stone. These are all just my opinions, but my purpose behind doing these is that some folks, and myself included, a lot of times we pigeonhole ourselves into certain models and we don't break outside of that, and we're maybe missing out on something that's actually pretty interesting or could really help our sound a lot. So without further ado, let's get into my top 5 overdrive pedals with number 5. Coming in at number 5 for me is the Minotaur overdrive model. And for a while, I would have to say this might have even been my favorite. And that's the funny thing about these, like my top 5s. It depends on what day you ask me. And I could probably change the order of these and even swap some out. The Minotaur is a model of the real world Klon Centaur, which is a very expensive overdrive pedal. I've used this in a lot of presets and I really like it. I haven't used it as much recently, as there's a few others sort of towards the top of my list that keep kind of getting the call. One word though about my use of overdrive pedals. I very seldom put them into a perfectly crystal clean amp. I always like to have a little bit of grit or bite on my amp anyways. Oftentimes using my volume control to dial it back if I want to clean it up. And I find the overdrive pedals kind of will take an already slightly overdriven or overdriven amp and just take it to a new place, if that makes sense. More so than letting the overdrive pedal do the heavy lifting. I hope that makes sense. So that's my approach to it. So before we start here, I have 6 snapshots set up, actually, as you can see over here on HX Edit. And the 6th one is just no overdrive, and it sounds like this. It's pretty clean, but there's a bit of a breakup on it. I'm using my Fender Elite Telecaster with single coil pickup, so if I plugged in a guitar with humbuckers, this is going to even break up more than that. Okay, so this is just a really quick preset I put together with the Brit Trem Norm in a 412 Greenback 25. I believe I have a 121 ribbon mic on that, as I oftentimes do. Yes, there it is. Okay, so that's the sound without any of the overdrive. Okay, so let's hear it now. I'll go over to snapshot 1, which is going to bring in the Minotaur. Now, what I like about the Minotaur in some ways is its simplicity. And what I really like to use overdrive sometimes for are just simple tone controls even, you know? We have a preset that might need maybe a touch more gain, but maybe we want the lead sound to be a little bit darker, have the option of making it a little bit darker, and we can use the controls on these to do just that. So I have an initial setting here with the gain on 8 and the tone on 3.5, and that's what this sounds like. Like the qualities of that overdrive. Now, one thing I like to do, and I was talking about this in my Create a Great Tone series revisited video the other day, is I like to explore the extremes of parameters to sort of see what they can do at low settings and what they can do at high settings. So even taking something like this and going back to 0 with it, and we'll set maybe the tone right kind of in the middle. We got this. Now if I compare that to no overdrive, it adds the slightest bit of hair. It doesn't change the tone too much, but even there we could take this and darken the sound up. And actually, that brings the gain down a little bit because it's probably just not hitting the front of the amp as hard and it darkens it up. So what happens if I roll this all the way up to 10, come back at around 5, get a little more noise, obviously. I don't have a noise gate on this, but now we have this sound. So there's a fair amount of gain on tap. What happens if we darken that up maybe towards the bottom end of the scale? Or closer to the high end of the tone scale. That's a little out of control, but I actually like this usually somewhere in around maybe 3, and it, you know, going into a sound like the non-affected signal here, right around here kind of has a nice sound to it. A nice smooth overdrive. That's going to change depending on the guitar you're playing, obviously, and the model that you're going into. You know, somebody might find that a little dark, so we could bump up the tone. But it really depends on what you want as your end product, how it's going to sit in the mix, both live and in the studio and whatnot. So, coming in at number 5 is the Minotaur, and that's kind of what that allows us to do. So let's take a look at number 4. Coming in at number 4 is the Scream 808, which is a TS-808 tube screamer. A very classic overdrive pedal. And this again is a wonderful tone shaper, I find. Here again, let's go to the sound without with. Very nice sound right out of the gate with that. The tone at 6.5. Now, let's do this. Let's bring the tone to about 5-ish, and we'll see what these extremes do on the gain here. So if we bring that all the way down to 0, compare that to no overdrive pedal. it actually still gives us just a hair more bite. Almost just like a boost pedal, but the nice thing is with this tone shaping ability. So if I roll that back to 3, and a lot of times I have used the 2-scream in just this way, very, very low gain of maybe 0 or 1. None. And the extremes on the tone side of things. Really nice. It doesn't get too muddy or dark all the way up to 10. Not too many times I'm going to go up high, really high like that. They're going to usually get a little bit harsh, but even in the middle here at 5. Now if we go up to 10 on that, it still stays very usable, and even with that, I think if I was to bring that down to 3, I'd be very happy. So very usable range, but on something like this, again, I might just settle back in around 7.5. Add in a little delay with that, and you've got a really beautiful lead tone. And if you want it a little darker, just bring that way down. Really going to depend on the guitar you're using and what you want in the end. So, coming in at number 4 is the Scream 808. And number 3 is the Valve Driver, which is a model of the Chandler Tube Driver. Now this is a pedal I really, really enjoy, but a lot of times when you first turn on the default settings, it's a little noisy, and depending on what model you're going into and how much gain you already have on tap, but I find it's one of those ones you can turn on and turn off real quick unless you tweak it a bit. So here again is the sound without overdrive at all. And now with the Valve Driver. It has a very nice singing overdrive, and I really like the bass and treble controls. If I pull the treble way back on this, crank the gain up. I'm actually going to bring the bass down just a bit on that. Kind of starts harkening back to, maybe a little Eric Johnson. We don't want to get into any copyright trouble with any of that. But I really do like the qualities of this. And again, if we go to we'll go 5 and 5 on the bass and treble. Bring the gain way down. There's no sound till we roll this in. Nice tone there, up to 10. I think I really like the way this compresses. And then we can further shape that, like I said, with our treble if we want to bring that back to warm it up a bit. So you can see there's lots of this beautiful compressed singing overdrive in there, especially when we crank it up to 10. So number 3 is the valve drive. I really, really enjoy that overdrive model. On to number 2. Number 2 is the heir apparent, which is the analog man prince of tone, which is kind of like half of a king of tone, which we also have in the Helix. So I really like this for the tweakability, especially in use with snapshots with the Helix, right? We have gain, tone, presence, but we also have the clipping mode, which we can go use it as just a boost pedal, an overdrive, or a full-blown distortion pedal, which is kind of neat. And we can use snapshots to kind of build that throughout a preset if we wanted to, which is a really neat feature. We have the gain mod, which is a normal or a higher gain. So lots of possibilities with this one, and even changing the voltage of the pedal from 9 volt to 18 volt. Not something I've played with much. I usually leave it on 9 volt. But here we have these settings here: gain at 8, tone at 3.9, presence at 0, overdrive, higher gain mod, and 9 volt setting. So with no overdrive pedal, heir apparent. Really, really liking that tone. So again, if I was just to turn that on to a boost at these same settings, the distortion setting, stays very usable at all of them, just with subtle differences in the amount of distortion there. So let's go to the gain control, down to 0. With no overdrive. It adds a hair of overdrive all the way up to 10. Nice thing is it's still usable all the way up through that range. Now the tone, if I go down to 0 on that, it's hard to really destroy the sound much with this. All the settings are kind of usable. All the way up to 10 on that. Not normally a setting I would use, but if you really needed something to cut, that might work. Now, if we were down here a little bit darker, we can dial in some presence. Let's go all the way up to 10 on that, see what happens. So we could play between the tone and the presence. And that in conjunction with a little more tone up. Now if I do change this to the normal gain mod, like I said, we just get a little more gain. Now the 9 volt to 18 volt. The 9 volt feels a little nicer under the fingers, I find. So that is the number 4 on my list, which is the Heir Apparent, which is the Analog Man Prince of Tone pedal. Wonderful, wonderful overdrive pedal. And last but not least, number 1. So coming in at number 1 is the Diana Drive, which is the Hermida Zen Drive. Now this is kind of, from what I understand, supposed to be, and I used to own one of these pedals in real life, I loved it. I believe this was made for Robin Ford to kind of capture that Dumble quality too, which is one of my favorite tones. So it's got a really neat feature set on it. And so again, let's just take a listen to this with no overdrive. Diana Drive with these settings. Okay, so let's listen to the extremes. That's on 10. If I go down to 0 versus off, we lose a little bit of output all the way down there. So let's bring that up a little bit higher. Off. So it starts to add a little bit of hair down there. This is really nice at subtle settings. Versus off. I really love that tone. This is my all-time favorite of all these. But now the voice control is interesting. Let's go to an extreme on it. Versus. So what happens, not only does it get darker as we go down, with less bite, but it also has less overdrive. If we want to get the more overdrive out of it, we could have the voice control all the way up, gain all the way up, and tone down. Considerably less gain here. So you can kind of see, you can go to pretty extreme settings on this, and it's really nice. So a lot of possibilities on tone shaping on this, but let's bring that back down maybe there. Bring the tone maybe in around 5 and see what this voice control does. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say where my favorite setting would be on that. Again, I like the feel of the way that kind of compresses. So that's a lovely, lovely effect. And I just love the controls on it. Very easy to shape things, you know, to get what you need out of it. So, not that these are all set up the same way at all, but let's just go through these. Here's the Minotaur. Scream 808. Valve driver. Set for way more gain. The heir apparent. And finally, the Diana drive. And that's it for my top 5 Overdrive models. So I don't know what that was, if that was of any use to anybody. I hope so, and I hope it kind of just opened your eyes to what those models are if you haven't tried them, or if you're maybe stuck on one or another, like I sometimes get. And it's nice to just sort of see some of these in use, see how they sound. And obviously, like I said, this is by in no way sort of be all and end all look at these, because it really depends. If I changed the amp model out to something different, you know, these overdrive pedals are gonna sound considerably different on their own as well, going into something else. So it was just, you know, a quick run through, sort of keeping the preset the same and hearing what all these different models can do in front of this particular setup. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it helped you open your eyes to maybe try something new on your Helix and get some interesting tones or something a little bit different. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Please like the video, share it if you don't mind, if you know anybody who would like to take a look at it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. And I'll be back soon with some more new and hopefully enjoyable content. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.